Tuesday, and welcome back to another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. I'm Mary Morton, and along with my buddy Chad Fellers, we have casual talk about the challenges and successes in medical affairs with the most exciting and impactful professionals in pharma. As always, we have another great one for you today, so stick around.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. I'm your host, Chad Fellers, along with my nifty sidekick, Mary Morton. How are you, Mary?
I'm doing great today. How are you?
Oh, better than I deserve. It's still hot here, but I think we're going to be saying that through September. Maybe are we going to get spring? I don't know. We rarely get that in the South.
We haven't even come to fall yet. What are you talking about?
I know, or even just like a seasonal break. I guess it goes either from summer to sleet. That's about what it is here.
Well, what are you calling hot?
Remember, he's in like the Phoenix area.
Yeah, but it's dry. It's dry heat, though, right? It's not. It's not
that means nothing.
It's not I beg to differ, but it's still hot. Yeah, there's no doubt. It's not as hot. Fair enough. Fair enough. Oops, I almost said his name. Fair enough. To our mystery guest for the moment. Yeah, it is not as hot as Phoenix. Very true. So, well.
I bet he's not playing golf every single day like some people.
I'm not playing golf every single day. I wish I try to swing a club every single day in some way or form. It doesn't. But what I'm learning is practice doesn't make perfect. It's perfect practice makes perfect, right? So I haven't figured out the perfect component of it. So I'm not getting much better, Mary. But so you can send me some of those golf balls that always land in your yard if you want. That'd be great. So anyway, because I need more. I really do need more. And what
yours are in somebody else's yard.
That's right. All right. So with that, I was talking about more. I'm excited about the conversation we're going to have today. More golf balls. Not going to really talk about golf balls, but we're going to talk about M.O.R.E. Really excited about this conversation. It's with one of our previous podcast guest, and I'm ecstatic to have him back. Without further ado, Mary, why don't you share with our listeners who's joining us again today?
We have the amazing John Sandstrom with us again today. So I'm very excited to have him back. One of my faves, all-time faves. So if you guys remember, John was on a year and a half ago, maybe, talking about giving us all the lowdown on the history of MAPS, Medical Affairs Professional Society. And I think some of the conversation was actually about how it had evolved from its early days until now. And so it seems like we're going to talk about other types of professional evolution today, because John has a really cool concept probably not even doing it justice, that we're going to kind of talk about today. So welcome back to the show, John.
Thank you, Mary. Nice introduction, and I'm really excited to be here today.
Me too. So as always, actually, I'm not sure if I asked you any of these questions before, so they'll be new.
Okay.
So we ask, you're kind of in a baseball town. I mean, spring training is over there, Cactus League.
Mm-hmm.
So we ask everybody, like, what would their walk-up song be? Like, what is your personal theme song?
It's funny, you had brought this up, and it's an Imagine Dragons song. I actually just posted it yesterday because I thought, wow, this is a great theme song for me. And I can pull it right up here. It's Whatever It Takes. I don't know if you know that song.
Oh, gosh.
But, it's a pretty cool song. Yeah.
We don't recognize you when you sing it, Mary. So
I didn't mean to sing it. It's just I couldn't help it.
Well, here, I've got it. I can play part of it right here.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Break me down and build me up.
So you know the beat. You've heard it before.
Yeah.
See, I almost sang it again.
Get you
I'll
What
have to
going.
meet
else
myself
take?
and we do
You
the
know, I like
right.
the adrenaline in my veins. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So
Hmm.
Nice choice.
that's a great one. So
Yeah.
I had a couple of like sort of rapid fire hot seat questions for you, and I wanted to keep them on theme. So, if a fictional character, any fictional character could be your
Okay.
best friend, who would it be?
A fictional character. You know, it would, well, probably, you know, I like scuba diving and I like the ocean. And I'm going to date myself. And he's kind of real, but he is fictional too. It'd be Flipper.
Flipper.
Wow. I
I
love
love
it.
that. It would be cool to have a dolphin friend and be able
Yeah.
to know. Yeah. And
Okay.
as a scuba diver, you know, I'd be in the water all the time and he'd be my best friend. And we, you know, have a good time. So yeah,
Help you see the world through a different lens.
that's
Faster
right.
than lightning.
Uh-huh.
They call
Okay.
him
So
Flipper.
I love dolphins.
now you're
Yeah,
singing.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
Do you remember the rest of it?
They call him Flipper. Flipper. Faster than lightning. That's about what I remember.
I think I just found your new best friend, John.
Yeah,
There
maybe.
you go.
Didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
Um, so, so in a similar vein, if you could find a fictional character that would be your mentor, like could have been like a fictional boss in TV or movies, or like Michael Scott. I don't know if Michael Scott would be
Don't, don't laugh. But it would be Yoda.
Ooh.
inspire you. He
Right?
would.
Full of wisdom. Yeah.
Makes sense
Yeah.
it does.
Are we going to do that for the whole time?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I love those answers. Those are good. So,
I'm not trying to impress with my answers, by the way.
Well, but they're original and they're unique. I mean, this is definitely your own, and you owned it, which is great.
Yeah.
Flipper. I've not thought about Flipper in a long time.
Yeah.
Well, clearly you haven't lost a second of the theme song.
I know it's useless trivia, I guess.
It's
Maybe,
not.
but anyway.
And remember Sandy, you know, my last name's Sandy. Some people call me Sandy. So remember that. There's that affiliation.
There you go. There
Yeah.
you go.
So when we all started kind of chatting about this topic that we're going to talk about today, we were kind of talking about like more of a broad focus about when you find yourself in a place to reinvent yourself, and being able to stay relevant in pharma. And but you actually have a framework that is really, it's a really fascinating way to approach it. And so we're going to be talking about that today. So, so what that is, and I'm not going to give too much of it because I want John to elaborate on it, but it's called the power of M.O.R.E, and that is an acronym. So each letter in M.O.R.E stands for something. And again, I'm not going to give it anything away, but the graphic that you sent me is so dynamic.
Before we get going, as tradition, we like to give our listeners just a snippet of key takeaways that they can walk away with to kind of set the tone for the conversation. So would you mind sharing a few of those with our listeners?
Yeah. So I would say a few key takeaways are people really want more in life. And it could be more spirituality, more money, more prestige, better job. But a lot of people don't have a plan. And so the key takeaway from the Power of More is what I've set up are 4 pillars that we'll talk about during this podcast. And those 4 pillars help you navigate a path to getting your more. And that's really what it's all about. And so it's a discipline that I developed after COVID. And there are a few things going on in my life that we'll talk about that motivated me to do this. And I realized that I can leverage this to everything. And that's why it's become basically a foundation for how I navigate through challenges in life.
So you kind of alluded to it a little bit. You said you kind of developed this concept during COVID, but
Yeah.
like what was going on in your life, in your world, in your career
Yeah.
that kind of got this rolling?
Yeah. So, we all went through COVID and, there was big shutdowns and we're all working from home. And, I wound up like a lot of us, I'd wake up in the morning and roll out of bed, put my sweats on and start working. And next thing I know, it's 8 o'clock and I'm having dinner and going back to bed again. And, um, my,
Yep.
my, my career, was doing well because I was getting my work done. But my health was lagging. I mean, I ballooned out to 230 pounds and I realized I had to do something about this. And, we all have our New Year's resolutions and, we go to the gym and work out for about a month. But, if you go to the gym, you notice that people pretty much fall off quickly by February and all those new people are pretty much gone by March. And so my question was, how do I keep myself motivated to keep working out? And how do I get back on track and make a lasting change? And so that's where I came up with the Power and More. And it's four foundational principles that we'll be talking about today. The M stands for mindfulness, and basically being self-aware of yourself and your surroundings around you. The O stands for outlook. It's your compass that drives you. Positive outlook, you're going to have a true north. Negative outlook, and you're going to go down. And then you have the R, which is relationships. And we'll talk about the importance of the right relationships. And then the E stands for empowerment, which is responsibility. And we are all responsible for whatever happens around us, regardless of who's impacting your life. You're responsible for making that change. And so I applied this to fitness and working out. And, as you can see, I'm not 230 pounds anymore. It's about my 1500th day since I started working out. But, I'm down to 12% body fat. I'm bench pressing 225. I'm up from, benching 135 pounds and, I'm 186 pounds. So, I think I've made a lot of progress from where I've been. So, and all of that was through the Power of More, and relationships were involved in that as well.
So, I wanted to kind of get into the career stuff a little bit too, especially in pharma,
Absolutely.
we're an industry that moves like very quickly, not quite as quickly as AI seems to be moving and changing, but, how do you find a way to, create enough space so that you are able to formulate a good plan to respond to things responsively instead of just reacting when you
Yeah.
get hit with a change?
So that hits on mindfulness, the M and more. And I think what's most important is to stay on top of headlines and be aware of what's going on and use any resource that you can to stay on top of things. That can be your personal network, ensuring that you're networked with the right people. Um, I currently use AI technology. I've got a program in ChatGPT where every morning it outputs key headlines that I want to know that are relevant to the industry, investing, health. And so it gives me a great summary every morning so that I'm aware of what's going on. But it's really key to understand that both from an external standpoint, but also internally through your network. You'd be surprised what people internally will tell you if you're connected well with them. And to stay informed and really have your finger on the pulse allows you to start planning for contingency plans. So it's important not to just react as soon as you hear something, but it is always important to really have a contingency plan and start to understand, okay, if this change happens, how is it going to impact the people around me, which is really important. You may get a new boss, you may have less employees working with you, or it may impact you directly. You may lose your job, or you may be reassigned to another job. So really become self-aware of those things and start to think about contingency plans so that the bottom line is when it does happen, you are in a position where you can react and you have a plan as opposed to scrambling and panicking. And some people even just shut down when it happens.
I, I like the idea of, I think what I heard you say is being very intentional just to not actively respond to from an emotional standpoint or whether it's in fear, but it is having, being able to step back from circumstance and thinking like, why is this making me feel anxious? Why is this making me feel excited? Is this something that's coming up routine that I definitely need to be aware of? Or for someone like me that is neurodivergent, I guess you would say, or ADHD driven, I can go from left to right, so many different ideas that come forward. Same way I can read things and think, oh, I've got to do this, 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 and this. And that's not always the case, right? You could be
Right.
like a jack of all trades and master of none. Certainly MSLs have to, or those in medical affairs just have to adjust and adapt. But it really is being able to step back and saying, like, why am I feeling this way? Is this really a trend or things like that? Or what signals am I seeing? So I guess that leads to my question. What signals tell you that your role, organization, or industry actually is changing?
Yeah, so you can see changes in strategy. You may be going gung ho in one strategic direction, and then suddenly there's a change that doesn't make sense. Obviously, changes in resource allocation. I mean, how many of us been through it where all of a sudden
Yeah.
travel starts to get cut, right? And there's scrutiny on travel when it never was, and the next thing you know, people are getting let go, right? So that's important. Pay close attention to leadership language and how they're saying things during town halls or whatever meetings that you're um, at. And then, what are the decision-making priorities? Have we deprioritized things that were really important and now they don't seem to be important anymore? Why is it no longer important? It was very important before. So, these are all changes that could potentially impact you. And it's not that it's gonna happen, but you just need to be aware of it, that it could happen. I use the analogy of sailing, because I race sailboats and you
What
can
does
have
he not do?
Exactly. Exactly.
you can
He
have great
races sailboats. I can't wait to hear this, honestly, because I feel like
well
sailing is one of those things that feels like it's not in your control. So
nothing's better than being in control in a sailboat and having the wind, cooperating in a race and being ahead, but the wind can change, and you know, it's best not to wait till that wind changes. I mean, you can see if you're an experienced skipper, you can see ripples on the water and you can see where the wind is going to change or it's going to stiffen up, or maybe you're coming into a flat area. Uh, the tide, the waves, they all can affect you and they all change. And so you need to be aware of that. And so not only that, as a leader, if you're a skipper, you need to have a well-trained crew. So when that change happens, they know what to do. They're not caught off guard, deer in the headlights, right? And so I've seen so many situations with novice skippers sailboat racing where boats are colliding because the skippers just freak out and go into a panic and just start shouting at their crew. Whereas, if you're an experienced skipper, everything's calm. It just happens and you react. And so you want to be in that kind of a situation in life, whether it's your career or life-changing events. You want to always be able to adapt. And that's what's key with having this mindfulness.
Mm. Mm-mm-mm. Um,
on the other side of that, what if you ignore things?
yeah.
Like, sometimes you have blind spots for things.
Yeah, if you ignore it, then that is devastating because you're going to have a blind spot and you're going to be caught off guard. You will always be caught off guard when something changes if you ignore it. And you will not have time to react. You may think you have the time to react, but likely chances that you're going to react instinctively and you probably will make the wrong decision, or you're at risk of making the wrong decision.
So John, one of the things I was thinking through, just I love the analogy with the sailing. One of the reasons the whole genesis of this podcast is to learn from others, and that means learning good things, learning from others' mistakes or experiences as well too. And I didn't know if there was an example maybe directly related to your medical affairs experience in your entire journey, right? So and regardless of the role, where you didn't have, because this just happened, right, with COVID. Can you think of a
Right.
time maybe before you had this in place where you were more reactive versus being able to, if you would have had this, you might have done something different in place. I think that would be very valuable for the listeners.
Yep. I'll tell you my biggest probably career mistake that I had made was, I'd worked for a great biotech company, HIV company, who was a leader in HIV, and I thought it was a one-trick pony back in the day. And so I did fairly well in option. Um, so I thought, well, this company looks like it's going to fold. So there's a new company. Um, and I think I'll join that company because the stock option play is pretty cool. And so I left the company, went to another company. Um, it missed its primary endpoint after about 2 years. So we went bust, the company I went to. In the meantime, this company that I left is today one of the largest biotech companies in the US.
Okay.
And where I stayed, um, it would have been a very lucrative opportunity for me to stay there. So big career mistake based on lack of knowledge, lack of really reflection on what was really going on, and just listening to the rumor mill. I was much younger then, but really listening to a lot of the rumor mill on chat. What is Cafe Pharma?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I love it. Hey, John, first, thank you for being vulnerable about that. I
Yeah,
think it's really, and obviously it led you down a different path, but you're where you are today. And
yeah,
part of that's because of the path that you took, and you're doing really well now too. If you had that in place, is there a couple things that come to mind that you would have done that we've talked about so far, or maybe even teasing up for the rest of our conversation that may have informed your decision maybe differently, um, if you had the more in place?
yeah. So if I had the more, I would have been more mindful of my surroundings.
Okay.
So rather than investing and also my relationships. So rather than investing in the feedback of my peers and being a part of a peer group who just ruminates on rumor, I
Yeah.
probably would have networked more with leadership
Okay.
and developed that relationship so that I'd be more in the know and probably protect my position if anything had happened anyway. So I should have been planning that contingency plan, right? By working with leadership, making myself highly visible, understanding the direction the company's going in, making myself relevant within the company, and then probably staying with the company because I would eventually realize that this is all a rumor.
This is gold, John. It really is.
Mhm.
These leadership lessons that we can have and apply regardless if you've just new to industry or you've been doing it for 10 years or 15, whatever, it does not matter, right? I think that
Right.
this is applicable to whatever stage you're in your career. So thank you for sharing that. So
Sure.
let's talk about how often do you do this? Like reevaluating, is it done routinely? What does that look like so far that you in your implementation of, I guess, since COVID and utilizing
Yeah.
this?
So there isn't a day it doesn't go through my mind because I mean my license plate is the POM, VPOM for the Power More. So
Oh,
Like
wow.
it.
a lot of people stop me. I guess a POM is also an Australian derogatory word for British people in Australia. So a lot of Australians pull me over to and
Oh,
ask me
wow.
if I'm British Australian. but
Oh.
but but yeah, so it's always on my mind. I will say I'm not perfect. And so, I catch myself. The mindfulness part is pretty difficult. To be mindful of, basically self-awareness of yourself and the people
Yeah.
around you and how you impact them. But it is top of mind. I think it's really important. And certainly trying to remain positive on my outlook, but being grounded in reality for
Mm.
the O, I think is really important. And then relationships, relationships are key. You're interacting with people at work, at home, socially all the time. And I think it's so important to have constructive relationships.
Mm.
Get rid of the toxic people. It's really hard because some of them are lifelong friends and family, but you got to keep the people that are going to move you ahead. And it's not always the people that agree with you.
Yep.
It's good to have friends that challenge you. It could be, politically or career wise. They may have different priorities, but to be challenged and to not be in an echo chamber is very healthy because it gets you to think and gets you to do a self critique of yourself. And I think that's very important as part of your mindfulness.
Really good. Really good. Okay. So we've talked about the M. So why don't we transition to the O? So outlook, right? So how do
Yeah.
you view uncertainty as an opportunity without minimizing the risk?
Yeah. So, it's important when we say optimism, right? That it's not denial. So it's not Pollyanna, right?
Yep.
It's really important. So you need to be optimistic about the situation, understand the risk, it may be real, it may not be real. But the one thing that you can be optimistic about is that you're in control of what you can control.
Well,
And you need to be, if you are pessimistic about it or you're down about it, it is going to drive you down. I mean, it's been proven, that if you smile, you'll make yourself happy and you'll be more optimistic just automatically by just smiling or just laughing. And so I think it is just so important to treat your outlook as your compass. It is going to be what drives your direction. You can have the best plan, but if your outlook is negative, you're not going to get anywhere.
mm,
So it's very key to be optimistic. And when I say optimistic, it's developing that plan, thinking about, okay, we have a risk. We may be going through some major layoffs. I've been told that, let's say, I've been told now not a may, but likely, what do I do? And so rather than worrying about my job and how it may impact me, think about, if you're in a leadership role, how do you make your team relevant? And we could talk a little bit about this, about my Shire situation there when I was back in those days. I think it's a really good example of that. Um, but how do you get your team behind you? How do you get yourself motivated to really have a plan to put your team and yourself in the best situation you can be to survive this challenge and come out on
mm.
the right side? And that's really key. And if you want, I can talk about that situation from those days.
I'm fascinated. Yes,
Yeah.
that's how we
Yeah.
learn. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, John.
For those of you that may not know, there was a great crazy ride for those of us at Baxter where we were at Baxter and then we spun off to Baxalta, and then a year later we're acquired by Shire, and then a year later we're acquired by Takeda. And so that was a very change-oriented time, a very difficult time to really manage through just on a personal level and also on a professional level. Um, and I think one of the things that I'm most proud of, and I always talk about this, when that question comes up in a job interview is, what are you most proud of? And what I'm most proud of is I kept my team together. I was a field medical lead. And I kept my team together during those 4 years of transition. And what I'm most proud of during that transition was when we were at Shire, they found no need or value in field HUR. And so they were going to shut down our team. They felt that the MSLs could do that job. And so rather than rolling over or breaking out the CV and looking for other jobs, I thought we had a chance. And I talked to our VP at the time, and he was willing to support me in my endeavors. And so I started to develop a plan on how do we get the team to prove ourselves. But in the meantime, as a team leader, I was very transparent about the team. It's like, hey guys, they want to shut us down. So, are you guys in with me or are you out? Because I think we've got a chance, but we all need to be in to prove our worth. And so I got the team behind me. I had their faith. We came up with a plan. The VP put me in front of the right senior leadership at the company. I had 30 minutes to present my case. I left that meeting with a 30-day chance. You got 30 days.
Wow.
We'll see how your team does. So I went back to the team. We collaboratively came up with a plan. We made sure that the team we worked with, the market access team, had high visibility with us. We ensured that we worked collaboratively. We had a good plan with them, but we also made sure that it was a collaborative plan. And after 30 days, the market access team didn't know how they worked without us.
Mm.
And as a result, we were retained and we weren't let go. And so, I oversimplified that there was a lot of other things that took place, but it was really about putting that plan together and getting your team behind the plan, um, listening to their concerns, taking in their insights, and leading through it. And so, um, we were successful,
I
very
love
successful.
it.
Yeah.
I love it. And yes, it definitely sounds like you oversimplified it to be able to tell the story. There's a lot of complexities that went along with that. But I think one of the things that stood out though is, I mean, not only just being able to lead through adversity, but not doing it
Yeah.
on your own as well too,
Right.
right? I mean, you had made so many
Mm-hmm.
deposits within your team and built, granted,
And
or
leadership.
you earned the trust with them,
Right.
right? So you could be transparent and then allow them to partner with you to come up with a solution. You didn't just take it on
Absolutely.
your entire, on your shoulders in entirety, right? So,
Right.
and that's what good leaders do. They know
And
what they can help distribute, and they're not smart enough to do it all on their own as well too. Let's be real. I mean,
right.
we really need others, um, uh, because we have blind spots, right? So,
Right. And I'll tell you,
very,
it wasn't about me going just to senior leadership and convincing them. The VP of market access hated us. He didn't think we were of any value. And that was the team we had to work with.
yeah,
We
wow,
had to have a plan, and I had to have a plan to get in his head and show him that we were valuable. And he was one of our greatest fans
wow,
afterwards. So it was a very positive outcome, but it could not have happened without a plan,
yeah.
without relationships both up and down, and making sure that you had the trust of everyone involved. It was just so key.
What I think is really interesting about that is, and thank you for sharing that story,
Sure.
is that, if we're talking about outlook, you shared your outlook. You established a level of trust with your team that you could be very transparent with
Mhm.
your outlook of what was about to happen. You got buy-in from them. That guess it kind of leads into relationships a little bit too. And you changed the outlook of your market access guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a big success story to me. And so I don't mean to go negative here, but as we look at outlook as an
Yeah.
example, I mean, we're all faced with things that aren't successes. And, it's what we make of it. So a- have you had a situation with a failure that taught you more than a success story might have ever taught you, and how to approach something with the right outlook?
Yeah. I would say probably, getting laid off, is 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 a failure. Like, let's face it. I mean, we can say, "Oh, I got laid off with the group," but even as a group layoff, you were the low person on the totem pole for whatever reason. Because if you truly were valued more than the people that they retained, well, they would have retained you, right? So I think it's important to recognize that and reflect. And I'm thinking about a situation where it was a toxic work environment. Without getting into too many details, it was a situation where we had somebody running medical affairs who had no prior medical affairs experience and had very little trust in the team, yet had and still has some very talented people on the team. And so I think, going into that situation, when I reflect, I think, yeah, I was not mindful of the situation. I could have handled it differently. Beginning with the interview, there's some red flags, like, my boss got fired the day I accepted the position, and then I got my boss's job. So, rather than letting that be your ego, and say, wow, I got my boss's job, I should have probably thought, well, that's a red flag. you know?
Mm.
Um, so, and then during the interviews, and we have this happen a lot, when you're being interviewed and suddenly the interviewer is talking more about themselves and the company than interviewing you. Well, maybe they like you, but that's kind of a red flag about their management style, right? So from the beginning, I take fault for accepting the position because, there were a lot of red flags. But then while in the position, okay, you realize, okay, you're in this toxic position. What are you going to do to survive? So sometimes, when you're in these situations, let's say it is a narcissistic behavior, you need to figure out how you're going to adapt to survive that. You need to figure out what's making them tick. And typically, those types of people want to feel like they're in control and want to be able to feel like, they're the ones taking responsibility and they're the ones getting the credit. So you really need to take the focus off yourself and put all the focus on them and cater to them. And then in the meantime, you start figuring out your exit strategy,
Yeah.
um, as opposed to challenging that person. So I think, it's very important to have these thoughts in mind. But sometimes, you want to do a good job. You get so caught up in doing the job and you get so caught up in trying to, make your output perfect. You're spending hours and hours and hours a day that you don't have the time to look for another job.
Yep.
And so again, that comes back down to, the power of more, where you need to have a plan, right? You need, because I know people at that company right now, they're telling me I need to look, but I don't have the time to look. They want to get out right now. So they're going to, they're not prepared for what could happen to them. And so this is where you really need to think about what do I do for myself as a plan? So it's kind of a negative situation, but it's a reality in our industry. It happens all the time, and so I think people need to be prepared for that and act on it.
Yeah.
Great example. I think we may have worked for the same person, John. Based off that. In full disclosure, it's one of those things, John. Like, my body is still recovering, and it's been years. My body is
Yeah.
still, of being in fight or flight for
Mhm.
a long time, and not recognizing that, and knowing that I was facing a battle that I would never win, but still thinking that. I was so stuck in my persistence that I was doing the right thing with a great team and this, that, and the other,
Yep.
and to my own detriment. So I think there's wisdom in what you said about how to manage that, and then even acknowledge it for what it is, and develop a plan to exit, because you're
Sure.
setting the boundaries, right? I mentioned the word boundary earlier, and we can't put boundaries on others. I'm learning this as now that I have adult kids now. I can't set their boundaries, but I can set boundaries of what I will and won't do for them or with them as well too. So I feel your pain in that, but
And let's
we don't see it in the moment, right? We have to
Yeah.
we reflect back. So
Well, let's not make it all painful either, because
That's
then
right.
there was a positive outlook that came out of that, right?
That's right.
So what happened was, it's like, oh, okay, I'm gone. What do I do now? And so, a lot of the knee jerk reaction is, okay, I'm going to flood LinkedIn with my CV and look for a job, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to contact everybody I haven't talked to in 5 years and see if they're hiring, right? Um,
Yep.
But I took a much more objective approach. Again, back to the power of more. Being mindful of, okay, well, what happened? Well, I chose the wrong job to begin with. I never should have chosen that. So my thought was, okay, it's not a priority to me right now to find a job. I want to find another job, but it's got to be the right job.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be any job, right? And so what happened was, as a result of this happening to me and as a result of me reflecting, I was able to find an opportunity that is just so unique and so cutting edge and so exciting that money is not even a factor.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
it's like I wake up motivated to make something happen because we're making new things happen. And it's so exciting. I said exciting a couple times already, but
It must
but
be
but
that
It
exciting.
must be. It
but
must be.
it turned into a positive. And so, you've got to understand that you're going to have ups and downs,
Yeah.
just like the stock market or anything else. But, those who stick with it and learn, even though it may not have been totally in your control, you need to step up to the plate and take responsibility for what happened and reflect on what happened, and then
Mm.
move forward to ensure that it doesn't happen again.
Well, the R in M.O.R.E is not reflection, but reflection
No,
is definitely a big part of this. But why don't we move on to the R? And
yeah,
R is for
relationships.
okay.
So, what's important is really to identify who's in your relationship circle. Um, your relationship is going to really mold who you are. And throughout your career, you're going to have different relationships. And those can be acquaintances, and they can be positive work relationships or social relationships. But what's really key is to have core people, and it's a handful of core people that you can truly trust. Somebody that you can call up on the phone, and say, "Hey, I've got this problem. You know, um, can you help me with it? What are your thoughts? I want to run this idea by you, or I'm making this major career change. And am I crazy to do this?" So you need to have these kinds of friends that you can trust. And as I said before, they're not necessarily people that agree with you all the time. I think that can be a problem, having people that always agree with you. You need to have people that will challenge you as well. But the main thing that you want to do in your relationships, whether they're part of your core circle or your peripheral relationship circle, is to get rid of the toxic relationships. The ones that are going to tell you that you could never do that, or the idea is crazy, don't even think about it. Um, that's toxic, and they're going to bring you down, probably because they see themselves never getting to that position. So, um, and so it's so hard, especially when these may have been friends all your life who you've just gotten used to being around, or family members. You just have to get them out of your circle and your influence. You can still socialize with them or be in communication with them, but you really can't rely on them anymore. And it's probably one. I think the R is probably one of the most difficult pillars to follow. It's easy to say, but very difficult to follow.
Well,
The other
you
thing,
get just real quick on this,
yeah,
John. I sorry to interrupt,
yeah,
but this came to mind. You gave the example of there are people still in that situation that have not been able to get out of it, of that role with that organization,
mhm,
trying to get out. In essence, really not having time or a plan to be able to do that.
right,
And so I think what you're saying here in context with a relationship is what or who can I say no to in order for me to be able to say yes to certain things, right? That are going to benefit others, where I can serve others, as well as know that they have my best interests at play as well too, and they're going to shoot me straight and
absolutely,
hold me accountable, right? So, what can you say no to, where you can say yes to? We cannot do everything. We don't have time for everything. If we don't set that boundary or prioritize, we'll remain stuck in this situation, or it will be forced on us. Whatever the change is, will be forced, right? So,
right.
I agree 100% with what you just shared. All right, please continue. Sorry for the interruption.
No, no, and the other thing, I think what's really important, and we go back to maps, and I was pretty actively involved with the mentorship program, and I think having mentees is very important, especially as you start to get more advanced in your career. Um, and what I gain from mentorship is it helps me to reflect on where I'm at, and what my thoughts are.
Yeah.
So I feel that I get as much out of being a mentor um, as I would hope the mentees get from me. So it's a very good relationship to have as well. So always remember to start sharing your knowledge with those who surround you, because they'll
Hmm.
challenge you. I think we can go back to a sailing analogy again. Um, there's a famous sailor by the last name of Koch who um, won the America's Cup back after Dennis Conner had lost it. And in his book, one of the things that I always admired that he wrote about is that when you go back to the club um, after a race, always feel free to share your knowledge. He says so many skippers try to hoard their knowledge
Hmm.
um, for the competitive advantage. But he says when you do that, you're only racing against yourself. And so always
Mhm.
feel as though you can share your knowledge to make other people around you better, because ideally they someday will challenge you.
Yeah.
and it'll make you better.
I wanted to ask you guys
Yeah.
something. You were talking about like cutting toxic people out of,
Yeah.
you need to get the toxic people out of your circle. But I think of, I'm not going to call her toxic because she's my sister, but um, if I were to call her toxic, she would be toxic in a different way. Because she's always there to lift me up. She'll agree with me when she knows I'm dead wrong. That's a great idea. That dress looks great on you. I really like your boyfriend, all that kind of stuff. Um, but she's doing it, I guess, for the right reasons.
Right.
But she would steer me down a volcano probably if I were to say, I'm really excited about jumping into this volcano. And she's like, I think you can do it. I mean, what about people who are just not there for you to count on to give you the cold, hard truth about what you should do? I mean, how do you manage those people who are well-intentioned?
Yeah, I find it benign. You know your boundaries with your sister, and her intentions are good. So, leave it at that, and, just don't rely on her advice, and know that her intentions are to make you feel good, and, be happy with that. I think, the positive energy is good, and it's healthy. The last thing you want is somebody that just, gaslights you into thinking that you're not worthy, right? Because then you will
Yeah.
believe you're not worthy. Whereas your sister, you go, "Oh, well, she's telling me my dress looks good, I better double check." Yeah, I think, in those situations, I would not, like, banish them from my circle. Um, they would still be part of my relationships, just not somebody that I rely on. I just know my boundaries with that person.
Mm.
I may confront them depending on how close I am with them. Like, if it's a very good friend, I may, tell them, "Hey, you're always agreeing with me, but sometimes I don't think you're giving me the best advice." That's a nice situation where you can be point blank with them and speak truthfully. And if they accept that constructive feedback or constructive observation, it may draw the relationship even closer, right? Um, but in contrast, a toxic person is completely different. I mean, they're out to bring you down. And
Yeah.
so you need to identify those people and differentiate that from someone who means well, but is agreeing with you for all the right reasons, but wrong, wrong outcomes,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's being available for conversations, but not necessarily pursuing, right? I
Yeah,
think it's one of those things and acknowledging for what it is. So you
right.
mentioned, all right, so we talked about toxic. We talked about having great influences around us. So one person who's played the greatest role in helping you recognize where you are, how you need to evolve, all those types of things. Can you think of
Yeah.
someone?
I can think of 4 people, that I'll throw out. So spiritually, I'll just say Jesus, and some people go, "Oh my gosh, John said that," um, because
Not me. Not me.
I'm not very religious when I talk to people, so you wouldn't get that feeling from me because I don't talk religion. But I'll say, like, if you reflect on his teachings, he was a great person, and there's a lot that can be learned from him, right? So I think, that would be number one. And I learned so much by just reflecting on the writings about him. So I think that's very important. I had a VP at a company that I had a very long stint at, initials ET, so you'll know who you are out there. Um, Very impactful in my career, gave me great advice, was willing to tell me about my blind spots, before it became an issue. And I would say that I value that relationship. And to this day, we probably talk to each other maybe once a month. I mean, we're always sending each other text messages to congratulate each other on birthdays or announcements. So we remain close. And then I would say another one, TM, and she'll know who she is. I think she really helped me with my motivation to get fit. And so I think it's really important. A lot of positivity also helped me, to kind of think about Jesus a little more and how he impacts your life. So, I owe a lot of credit to her. My dad, my dad was I grew up in the army. My dad was an officer, and we had a very disciplined lifestyle. But I learned a heck of a lot from him. And so I give him a lot of credit for my key learnings from him. And then my son, you know, he got into a lot of mischief, and I learned a lot of leadership skills as he grew up. And I think I did an okay job with him. I mean, he's been a physical therapist for 3 years, and he just got promoted to regional director for a physical therapy chain. So
Wow,
I'm
that's great.
very, very proud of him. And I think a lot of those foundational things that I learned from my dad and other leadership that I applied to him, I'm hoping that he's applying it in his role, and I'm sure he is. So
Wow,
I love the people that you mentioned.
yeah,
You don't have
all of them.
to shy away from your faith. By the way, John, I think
yeah,
here's my. I mean, I'll be straight up. I mean, servant leadership. Where do you think that model comes from? And I can
right,
definitely see that you're a servant. You're a servant leader, and that's the model of success, right?
yeah.
So yeah. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah,
I
and
love the.
don't be wrong, like, I'm not shy of it. It's just that, I
Yeah,
don't talk a lot about it.
I
So
hear you.
I think some people out there will say, "Sandstrom?" He's like, I didn't expect him to say that. So,
Well,
now you know.
yeah. Now you know it's out there. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so we talk about evolving. Do people need different relationships at different times from a career perspective and different
Yeah.
seasons of the career, or talk just briefly about that?
You mean as far as relationships go?
Yes, as far as the people
Yeah.
that are
So
your core people, do those change based on the season? What are your thoughts on that?
so it is seasonable. For those people who are just starting out their careers, try to gain as much mentorship as you can. I mean, Kirk Shepard was a great mentor, and we had a great program at the company that we were at. My boss believed in a one-up mentorship where you mentor with his boss or leadership above him. And so I feel blessed to have had him as a mentor in my career early on. Those were the days before maps. Um, and then and so look for people in leadership positions who are respected within not only your company but maybe in industries or companies outside of where you work, and become a mentee of them. Ask them if you can be a mentee. You'll be surprised at how many people would be willing to take some time out of the month, maybe once a month for 30, 45 minutes to
Yep.
just have a quick catch up call. So capitalize on that early on. I think as you start to progress in the middle of your career, you're starting to go into a growth phase. So, really start to network with leadership and those people who can influence you
Mhm.
into other positions. I think it's really important to develop your brand among these people and learn from them. Again, mentorship, but now you're in a position where maybe these people are going to back you up and help you to get into advancement in your roles. And then certainly, as you start to get in the twilight of your career,
You
start
haven't
thinking.
you're not there yet, John. That's what, another 20 years or so. Is that right?
I think so. Like I said, I'm excited about, my current situation. So maybe a while. Um, but start thinking about how you can give back. And as I said, mentorship is a great way to keep you current because you learn a lot from what the pulse is of the people that are coming into your industry. So I
Mm.
think it's very important to be an active mentor.
So before we move on to the E,
Yeah.
I want to know who you have been in other people's relationship circles. What's the role that you play?
I've played a confidant. A lot of people know that they can trust me, so they've come to me with everything from relationship issues to career issues, and I try to provide objective advice. So I think people can rely on me being a straight shooter and not telling them what they want to hear. They may not always listen and do what I ask them to do, or suggest that they do, but I think people know that they can rely on me for that. And then
Mm.
certainly, I, as you know from my career background, I've been a trainer for a lot of my career, sales trainer. And so I think, people do come to me for education in certain areas and understanding things, better understanding things. So, I've been relied on in my role for that as well.
So are you the person that your wife goes to find out if the dress looks good on her? And how do you
Ooh,
answer that? That should have been one of
I
my
get
rapid
that.
fire questions.
I get that. It always looks nice.
that's right.
Good answer. That's why you're still married.
That's right.
So let's talk
That's
about
right.
the E.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, what is E again? Remind our listeners, John.
So E stands for empowerment, which is really important. And again, it goes back to taking responsibility for your own actions, right? So following the status quo may be safe, but you really need to um, take the bull by the horns, when change is happening, and feel empowered to make that change. So unless you take responsibility for what's going around you, um, you're just going to stagnate and you're going to be caught off guard. It's
Yeah.
just so easy to see something coming down the tracks and have the attitude that, oh, I think it'll go away. I hope it'll go away. We'll see what happens, when it happens, and then we'll deal with it. Well, it's too late by then.
Yeah.
So always be a good scout is really what it's all about. A scout's always prepared, right, for every contingency. Um, you need to be prepared. I mean, you know, hate to go back to sailing again, but well, let's go mountain
I
biking.
don't think you do. I don't think you do hate to go back to
I don't
sailing.
think you do either. That's right.
we, we go back. We can use mountain biking. I mountain bike here in Arizona, and we talked a little bit about the temperature. I mean, it's 110 today, but it can get pretty
Well,
bad. I mean, when I'm mountain biking in the morning, it's tolerable at about 95 degrees. But if I break down out there and I'm like, 10, 15 miles away from the trailhead, I'm in big trouble. Um, and so, you need to be prepared. I bring enough water, more than enough, in case that happens. I've got tools, the right tools. I've got spare tires. So in the case, of having a plan, am I going to break down? Am I going to crash? Am I going to, need first aid? Probably not, but I'm prepared and I have a plan should that happen. And I'm always thinking of, okay, what's the quickest route out of here if that happens, right? So always have that plan and be empowered, take responsibility for that. Don't rely on 911 hopefully working in your cell phone range.
yeah. Well, I mean, so I love the fact that you're saying you got to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
You got to be honest with yourself and your self evaluation. So as we first started talking, about what we were gonna talk about today, about being able to stay relevant, and adapt to change. How can you take a broad goal like staying relevant and turn it into something that you're going to be very specific to act on?
So I think what's first important is, you want to be able to rely on your relationships and really understand what's going on in your industry, both externally and internally,
Uh-huh.
and what is important to remain relevant, right? For me, a good example would be AI. I
Mm.
I don't know how many people have told me AI is a bad word, and oh, I'll never use it. Those same people are the same people who had the mindset back in the days of the slide rule who would switch over to a calculator. Okay, and we laugh now, but AI is a reality and it's here. And if you don't know, I'm not saying to use, Chat GPT like Google. You need to be on a much more sophisticated level to where you can program your Chat GPT to do what you need it to do, or whatever AI tools you use, whether it be Notebook LM or Perplexity. You need to know how to use these tools and understand them. And if you are not today, and I'm talking about medical affairs people, if you are not learning how to use AI and leverage it, you are going to be left behind. Whether you're an MSL in the field, because it is going to be taking over a lot of the things that we're doing. And if you're not the person that's able to control that AI and manage it, you will become obsolete. And so that's just a heads up. And am I saying it's going to happen in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years? Who knows? But I've prepared myself to the point where every day I try to learn as much as I can, using AI as a tool. And it makes you highly productive. And I'm very fortunate to be in a place that actually encourages AI use. And as a result, we actually operate as a very lean organization because we are effectively using AI as a tool in multiple facets within the organization.
Get on board. You got to get on board.
On board.
It's here. It's not
Here,
coming. It's here.
here,
And you better.
absolutely.
And John, what a better. I mean, for years we've wanted to be able to tell the value of medical affairs. This is
Mm-hmm.
a tool now that allows us to be able to tell that story in a much easier way. And
Yep,
there's an expectation for that story to be told. So to your point, I mean, that is a great example of
absolutely.
that. So thank you for sharing that, confirming it. This sounds pretty cool that your company's embracing it to the level that it was. So, or that it is rather. So, well, we like to leave our listeners with challenges and things like that. You've walked through the M.O.R.E process. So with that, is there a challenge or something that you'd want to share with our listeners as we wrap up our conversation today?
Well, I challenge people to use more and try to use it. I think, think about something that's going on in your life right now, whether it's restructuring. Do I have a new boss? Is there a new technology that's entered my organization that I don't know anything about and it's scaring the heck out of me, right? Could be a new Viva application that you don't understand, right? Um, so take that challenge, just one thing that you're facing, and go through the process of M.O.R.E. I mean, you have that. You can feel free to share that infographic that I have. But if you look at the mindfulness, I'll end with basically 4 questions associated with each of
Okay.
the pillars, right?
Oh, awesome.
So with respect to you know, think about, am I assessing the situation clearly, or am I reacting from fear and frustration or disappointment, right? So think about that. And on a scale of 1 to 5, you know, like, rank yourself within each of these pillars. So on a scale of 1 to 5, are you assessing the situation clearly?
Hmm.
If it's a 1, it means you need to do something. If it's a 5, it means you're, right on, you're assessing it clearly. So, questions you can ask within that is, what do I know is true? What assumptions are I making? What are rumors that I'm hearing, possible rumors? Am I putting my head in the stand and am I ignoring things? Or am I leveraging my network in order to, understand the situation better, right? Remember what I talked to you about when I was, in that company where I jumped.
Yeah.
Big mistake, right? Because I just wasn't really paying attention to the signals, right? And so that's, basically sums up what you need to do with mindfulness. With respect to outlook, really look in the mirror and say, what is my attitude, right now at this situation? Am I thinking optimistically that, I can create a plan to get out of this? Or am I anchoring myself with a negative attitude that I'm just going to let what happens to me and deal with it? And it's probably not going to be good. So, really consider your approach again on a 1 to 5 scale, you know, assess that and rank it. And then with respect to relationships, um, look at your relationships. How are you connected to people? Um, are the people I'm connected with, are they supporting me? Are they over supporting me and just telling me what I want to hear? Or, are they also challenging me and are they telling me the truth? Right. Those are really key things. And those are golden people that you want to keep within your inner circle. But also think about within your network, who am I staying in touch with? Am I connecting with
Yeah.
people? Um, Create a chat group. It reminds me, I created this chat group, the Career Comeback Club, and I, I need to get back
Oh,
into
yeah.
it and respark that group. But it's a group of us, and we chat among each other and talk about careers, and we network, and we give each other advice and give us leads on job opportunities. Create a group like that, because the last thing I like, and I always find it tragic, is somebody out of the blue calls me, from 5 years ago, and asks me, if I know of any jobs at my company. It's like, did you even look at the job board? And I haven't talked to you for 5 years, and now you're suddenly talking to me, right? So, so really maintain those relationships and try to create something. For me, it was creating this, you know, chat group. But do whatever you can to stay connected with people, because I think it's so important, and those don't need to be your inner circle, but these can be people that are, coworkers from the past or direct reports. So really, really consider that as far as building your relationships. The last one, the empowerment. Again, we talked about taking responsibility. Am I taking, action on, and this is key, on what I can influence, right? Control what you can control.
Yep.
Don't worry about what you can't control. And, or on the flip side, am I waiting for someone to tell me what's gonna happen to me, right? So on a scale of 1 to 5, evaluate that. And so whatever scores the lowest, those are the areas that you need to be able to start thinking about. And so what you want to begin to do now is, taking those 4 pillars, like let's say it is relationships. I already talked about ways to develop connections, how to identify your core group. Start building that. Start building a plan on how you're going to build that, right? And so, I'll challenge people to put that into play, and see what happens. And I'd love to hear feedback on how they do. So really, in essence, I think I can conclude this with the power of more is not, it's not about making things magically become good, right? Or
Hmm.
it's not sticking your head in the sand and being overly optimistic. The power of more is not controlling every outcome, but it's controlling what you can control. That's what it's about. And it's understanding that change is inevitable. And so because change is inevitable, it could be positive, it could be negative, but whatever change happens, you need to have a plan in place and you need to start preparing before that change happens. We didn't talk about positive change. If there's a positive change and a career advancement opportunity happens within your organization unexpectedly, are you prepared to take that?
Hmm.
Or are you going to scramble and try to make yourself look good? So
Yep.
really think about that, as I said, understand that change is inevitable. You can't control it, but you can certainly prepare for it and have contingency plans to address it.
I don't really know what to add to that. I think that was really good. I think actually there's one thing that I might add to, and I know that you mentioned this, and I'm just going to pull it back to the
Sure.
R, right? So when you come back to when you determine what's within your control, what decision have I been avoiding, what can I do now, and what's my plan? I've figured out what my scale is. That's where you can go to your trusted circle and say, "Hey, I have recognized this about myself." It's accountability, right?
Yep.
So how do I leverage the relationships I have to help pull me forward on some of these things that I could be stuck in? I mean, I may want to move forward on
100%.
some of these things, but I need accountability to help pull me with that. And that's where you can really leverage the relationships and the importance of those relationships and how you can leverage them, through that process as well too. So, it's just tying that all together, John. I think that that's so encouraging. It really is. I think you should write a book. I think you should write a book.
Yes.
Well, I've got the outline. I sent it to you. Yeah, I've thought about it, and I think, I guess I have to use the power more to
Yep.
get myself to have a plan to write that
We're
book.
going to be your relationship circle to hold you accountable.
That's right.
There you
That's
go.
right.
A
I love it.
relationship triangle.
John, thanks.
And on what you were saying,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just to interrupt.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the relationships chat, I just wanted to add, like if you go to lean into your relationship circle of, I need you guys to hold me accountable to this. I think it's also an opportunity to go back and say, I conquered this and I want to share it with you and I want to pay it now forward or back,
Right.
whatever. I think I get nerdy and I got chills right now, I know, but I think there's so much cool and awesome about this power of more. So I just wanted to gush a little, but I'm already trying to figure out how I'm going to get it kind of rolled out to my team.
You're going to start by evaluating yourself in those areas, right?
Yeah. Because if I am waiting for somebody else to control me, that's a 1.
That's right.
If I have everything under control, which I don't, that's a 5.
Yep.
So
There you go. I
All
love
that
it.
makes
Well, I
to
want
my
to get some
face.
feedback. I definitely want to get some feedback on how it works for you. So,
Oh, absolutely.
I'm really happy I could share it. I thought, it's a long time coming. I mean, I've actually used it for some of my team meetings in the past. And it seemed to be, I've used it for 2 different team meetings, and it actually was fairly well received. In fact, HR liked it. So, couldn't be that bad because
Hey, if you can get it past HR, it's got to be, it's good.
yeah,
John, again, I mentioned this earlier about great leaders. Great leaders they give away, and it's empowering. And I try to tell those I either serve or work alongside. I mean, and I tell my kids this for sure. I mean, giving is the one thing that you can control that you don't have. I mean, that is the most rewarding thing that can ever come is when you give away, and you've shared with us and listeners this approach, and I know it's going to have a great impact. So thanks for making
thank you.
time, for sharing what you've learned over the years, what you're continuing to learn, and then how to methodically approach the various circumstances that we will face. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So there's a lot of
100%.
ways that you can apply this. So thanks for joining, hopping on, and we need to have another conversation, get that scheduled here in the near future. So thanks again, John.
I'd love to. Yeah. And I'd love to, hear some success stories from both of you too. So
Will
feel free to,
do.
Yes. Yes,
Will
yeah.
we
do.
should have a recap, and because we've got a 4-week plan here.
That's right.
And you got the infographic too. So it's a
Yeah.
good review. So feel free to share that too.
Yeah. So absolutely, we'll share that.
Yeah.
I'll probably overlay it on the video too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, that wraps up today's conversation, where leaders learn from leaders here at MSL Lead Chronicles. Remember, leaders don't develop in isolation. We learn from one another. So get that network, find that close circle. They're going to hold you accountable. They're going to stretch you. They're going to affirm you. Make that your charge if you don't have those people in the next 48 hours. And until then, until our next conversation, lead well.